Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, it is just me. And the reason it is just me, because I've had some inquiries from people that they would like to hear my story and also Ben's story. So I figured I'll come on first. I'll share my story, and you can know a little bit more about me and how I got in the position that I'm in today. First things first, thank you for tuning in on whatever podcast app you choose, whether it's Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play Music. We're on all of them. And thank you for watching on YouTube. YouTube is something that is a relatively new venture for us. We really do enjoy it. And if you do go on and watch the videos and you find something that you think would resonate with somebody that you know, please share it with them. And in the end, if you'd like to reach out to either myself or Ben, you can always reach us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And we will get back to you, give us a day or two at least, and we will get back to you. And we're going to ask you for your phone number so we can have a conversation with you about your specific situation and hopefully give you some guidance on what to do. So, all right, so a lot of times when I share my story, I'm used to sharing my story to people that are either clients of ours here at Rock Recovery Center or parents of potential clients or parents of listeners of the podcast. And I normally do it in either a group setting or I do it over the phone. And I wanted to record this because I want to give you an opportunity to kind of understand how I ended up in the position that I'm in today with coming up on 13 years clean and sober and, doing the podcast now for coming up on 5 years and, have a treatment center, Rock Recovery Center. And there is a story behind all of this. And I wanted to share that with you because I think it could be really impactful for other people. So I'll just start by saying I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, Newcastle, Pennsylvania, just north of Pittsburgh. And I grew up, it was just me and my father. My mom left when I was 2 years old. She up and packed up and she drove across the country to Arizona and she took my sister with her. And my sister was only a year old. So she took my sister with her, left me and my dad, and that was it for, I didn't meet my mom for the first time until I think I was about 12 years old. And all the while, my dad did what he could with what he had. I was in daycare, obviously. He had to go to work. He had to provide for us, and he was a mechanic. And so he would go to work and he would take me to daycare, pick me up, blah, blah, blah. I was involved in sports. I played baseball. I played football. I got heavily involved in archery at a young age. I started shooting archery probably around 12 years old, and I was really good at it to the point where I would go to Pennsylvania state championships in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I shot on the teams and also shot on an individual level and won some medals, so on and so forth. And I really enjoyed it. It was something that I was pretty good at too. Baseball and football, I played it because it was, what you did. And as a young boy, so on and so forth. But my childhood wasn't that bad. My dad gave me everything that I ever wanted. I never went without. I always had food. I always had a safe place to live. I always got, as best I could, the attention that I needed from my dad. Keep in mind, he was a single father raising me. And, of course, there were areas in which could have been improved upon, but it's okay. I say that with saying I didn't have a ton of trauma, at least that I know of. There was no abuse. Maybe some sort of emotional abuse, I guess. And that wasn't until, later when I got more into my alcoholism. But for the most part, it was a pretty decent childhood. But there was always something missing. And at around the age of 12 or 13, I discovered alcohol. And I discovered alcohol by the way of just the people that I hung around. I always hung around the older crowd. If I was 12 or 13, my friends were 15, 16, 17, and I always took to them for whatever reason. And I ended up taking my first drink at 12 or 13 years old. It was a Zima. We sat around a table, me and a few friends of mine, and he had taken a Zima from his mom, and we just passed it around the table, and we all had some drinks of it, so on and so forth. And you hear some stories, people say, oh, as soon as I had those drinks, I knew I had found the love of my life. That wasn't necessarily the case with me. It was just something that I did. Shortly thereafter, I got involved with smoking cigarettes. A friend of mine, had taken some cigarettes from his dad, and we would run off into the woods and smoke these cigarettes, and they would get us all lightheaded, and it was something that we really looked forward to. And if we couldn't find cigarettes, we would just smoke hollow sticks. And we would go out in the woods and find anything. If you could burn it, we would try and smoke it. It's funny to think about that, but that's who we were. We were young. We were, like I said, 13, 14, 15 years old. Looking back on it, obviously there's some addictive tendencies there, but I wasn't by any means full-blown alcoholic at that age. But lo and behold, I started getting involved with kids that were, let's just say, not the best influence on me. And I think now, looking back, and this goes back to more of the emotional, I guess, abuse, but I'm reluctant to even say abuse. It was just emotional unavailability. When I turned 16 years old, my dad bought me my first car. And that was my real first sense of freedom, because it was a situation where my dad was a single father. I had a car, and I can go off and do what I wanted. And it was basically the unwritten rule of just be back at a decent time. I'm not going to necessarily ask a whole lot about what you're doing, where you're going, and so on and so forth. Just be back at a decent time. So that is really when things started to take a turn for me. I started getting involved with the wrong crowd. I was smoking weed a lot. The drinking at 16, 17 years old had progressed to an every weekend thing. And I distinctly remember when I got my first 6-pack of Busch 16-ounce cans, Busch Pounders. And I remember I was to the point where I could drink 2 of them and I would be drunk. And then I would be able to drink 3 of them and I would be drunk. And then lo and behold, I was able to drink 6 of them and then I was drunk. And when I was able to drink 6 16-ounce beers and I was drunk, I felt an accomplishment with that, because remember, I always hung with the older crowd, so I was able to keep up with them. Before, it was like a couple beers and I'm drunk out of my mind, and I would miss all the fun. But then I was able to consume more. My tolerance started building up. And so that kind of lasted for, years and years, because it was all my tolerance every day, every month, every year just started to increase. And by the time I had graduated high school, it was something to the tune of I was drinking probably 3-4 days a week and, 6 to 12 beers every day when I did drink, and smoking weed and doing all that stuff. Again, it was something that I believe, looking back on, was I alcoholic at that point? No, but I was definitely on my way there. I still, went to school. I still fulfilled my commitments. I did graduate from the skin of my teeth. It was something that I just did because I had to, not really because I wanted to. but it was okay. I graduated high school and I got an opportunity to go to a technical school in Pittsburgh to work on cars because my dad worked in the car industry for his whole entire life, and it was kind of the path that was being paved for me. So I started working at this car dealership at like 14, 15 years old, just washing cars and, doing lot kid stuff. I would move cars around. I would wash cars. I would do all these things that, you just do as a 15-year-old. Well, when I graduated high school, the owner of the dealership actually came up to me and said, "Hey, if you have any interest in being a mechanic, I will send you to school and I'll pay for it." And I said, "Sure, that sounds great." So for 2 years, I commuted to Pittsburgh and, was going to school to be a mechanic on General Motors. And I was falling right in the footsteps of my dad. And I did that. And I didn't really enjoy it. It wasn't something that fulfilled me, but I kind of felt that it was my calling. And my calling only because it's what I knew best. I grew up around cars. I would always tinker around on cars. And, so I felt, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Well, I graduated college or technical school or whatever, and then went out into the workforce. And all the while, my drinking was, again, continuing to grow. So from about 20 years old on, I had become pretty much a daily drinker. I was hanging around with, again, my drinking buddies, and it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for us to have huge bonfires out in the woods and, go four-wheeling and have a case of beer on the back of the four-wheelers and, just drink until we were completely obliterated and wake up and go to school or go to work and do the same exact thing the next day. All the while smoking weed, doing all those sorts of things. I turned 21 years old, and I remember it was, generally when somebody turns 21, they're like really looking forward to that because now they can go legally drink at bars. And for me, it didn't have that effect because I had already been drinking for so long, and I'm at this point able to consume more alcohol than the average person can. It was like, okay, yeah, cool. I can go to the bar, big deal. And I went to the bar and I would drink and I would do all those sorts of things. But I didn't enjoy it the way that I think some 21-year-olds would. It was at this point at 21 years old, I would say I was alcoholic. I was, again, drinking every single day, doing all the things that I shouldn't be doing. My work started to be impacted. Because I was a mechanic, I would work next to my dad every single day, and he started picking up on me smelling like alcohol when I was getting to work. And he would always say something to me, "Tom, you smell like a brewery." And I would say, yeah, I had some drinks last night, so on and so forth. But it never really became a huge deal until I was about 23. At 23 years old, I was drinking extremely heavily. It wasn't out of the ordinary for me to be able to consume a case of beer, 24 beers, and, whiskey, or vodka, or whatever the case is. It wasn't out of the ordinary. And honestly, a lot of the people that I hung with, we could drink. I mean, it was a blue collar town. It was very, you go to work. All of my friends either worked in labor jobs. They were in the union. Maybe they were bricklayers or electricians or, did a lot of paving companies, and so we all went out, we busted our knuckles, we got greasy, we got dirty, we did our job, and then we would party afterwards. And we all drank a lot. But I started noticing that when everybody else would stop and they would go home and they would call it quits for the night, I didn't want to. I wanted to stay at the bar, or I wanted to go get more booze. And, I was staying up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning partying, and then have to be at work at, 7:30, 8 o'clock the next day. Well, I could no longer be trusted to work on cars because I had wrecked a couple of cars just driving through the lot. I sideswiped a telephone pole one day because I was just still out of it from the day before. There were a couple cars that I just did regular maintenance jobs on, changing oil or doing a brake job or whatever. Blew up a couple of engines because of mistakes that I made that I normally wouldn't have made had I not been out drinking the whole night before. It started to really take an effect. And this particular dealership, and mind you, because my dad worked there for, at this point, 25 years, they always kind of brushed it under the rug because I was the head mechanic's son. And it really, and I'm not placing blame on them by any stretch of the imagination, but it did not help me that I had zero consequences from my job because, if I screwed up, they would just, Tom, listen, can you just slow down a little bit? Be mindful that, you're here, you have a job to do. But there were no real consequences. Well, they eventually moved me into car sales because I couldn't be trusted to work on cars anymore. So they're like, well, Tom, let's put you in sales and see how you do over there. And I went over to sales and, I sold cars because I couldn't work on them anymore because they didn't trust me to work on them. And I did halfway decent, but the sales jobs and car dealerships, at least up there. And I think, and it's not specific to car dealerships, any job that for the most part, there's substance abuse. It's not specific or worse in any other industry than the other. I was surrounded by more alcoholism, more drug use, and, I just went over and started selling cars, but still doing the same exact thing. And now I'm going on test drives with customers that want to buy a potential vehicle, and they would smell booze on me. And it got to the point of being embarrassing almost. Not almost. I mean, it really was. It got to the point of embarrassment. I was drinking all day, all night, and going in and selling cars. And just, it was a very low point in my life. And this was probably 24 to 25 years old. And at this point, I had gone to a doctor. And because I thought I had anxiety, I never felt relaxed. I never felt calm. I never felt okay. So I went to a doctor and they said, well, you definitely have anxiety. We're going to go ahead and give you a prescription for Ativan. And I didn't even know what Ativan was. I just knew that they said it was going to help me with my anxiety. And so I started taking it, and it did. It helped. And knowing what I know now, it being a benzodiazepine and it affecting my brain the same way that alcohol does, I would have never have done that, but I did. So I started drinking and taking Ativan simultaneously, and then taking Xanax simultaneously. And then at 25 years old, cocaine got involved because it was something that was there, and I said, sure, I'll do it. So from 25 to 26 years old, I don't remember really hardly any of it. So I'll take you to the last 3 weeks before I ended up getting sober. I was at a bar, and it was just a normal night. We were all drinking. It was a Friday night, so it was, it was just a normal Friday night. I left the bar, and I was driving home, and where I grew up, it was a lot of twisty, turny roads in the woods. I lived out in the middle of nowhere. I crashed my car. I crashed my car into like this ravine ditch type thing. And I don't remember any of it. I somehow managed to get my car home. And I woke up the next morning in my work clothes and I had blood on me. And I had known, at this point, I knew something happened. And I went out and I looked at my car and it was just completely destroyed. The front wheels were about to fall off and it was just a mess. All the oil and radiator fluid was out on the driveway. The car was not operable at all. So my dad was at work. This is a Sunday or a Saturday rather. And I call my dad and I tell him I hit a deer. He knew full damn well I didn't hit a deer, but this goes back to I was enabled. He ended up having the dealership send out a flatbed. They towed my car in, and I went with them on the flatbed to the dealership, and my story held up. Yeah, Tom hit a deer. They put my car into the body shop, and they were doing all the repairs and stuff, and they gave me a rental car. So my car was in the shop that I had just crashed because I was completely drunk out of my mind. They gave me a rental car. And 1 week later, I was at the bar. Again, no different than any other day. I was driving home at probably 2 o'clock in the morning and I got pulled over. And I got pulled over. I saw the lights on and I pulled over and I had a pocket full of Xanax and I immediately took those. And the cop, 2 cops walked up to my car, knocked on the window, did the whole deal. And one of the cops, funny thing is that I went to school with him, and high school rather. And so he was one of the ones that was there. And lo and behold, they put me in the back of the cop car and they took me to the hospital. They took me to the hospital because when I did my breathalyzer, I blew a .37. So that is, for the average person, you're not gonna, it's deadly. I blew a .37 when I was doing the field sobriety test, so they took me straight to the hospital because anything over a .26, you have to go to the hospital, yada, yada, yada. My dad comes and picks me up from the hospital. We're walking out. He slaps me in the back of the head and he said, "It's about time." And, I'm like, oh, yeah, it was just, bad luck, so on and so forth. And I had to be at work that Saturday. So I went home and I got a couple hours of sleep and got showered and everything. And my dad ended up having to take me to work because I didn't have a car anymore. The rental car that I was in got impounded. So I went to work and it didn't take but a couple of hours. They got a call from the impound place and said, "Hey, we got one of your cars here." And they obviously had it under my name. And they said, "We got your car here. Looks like Tom got a DUI last night." And I would like to say, they approached me and that's when I went to treatment, but that wasn't the case. They approached me and they basically another kind of slap on the wrist. And that was that. And it was 1 week later after that because when I got my DUI and I had got done with work on that Saturday, I just had them take me straight back to the bar. And so I got done with work on that Saturday at noon and they took me, I ended up getting a ride back to the bar and sat in the same bar stool that I had been in the night before when I got my DUI. And I remember there was a newspaper there and I was scouring the newspaper to see if my name was in it for getting picked up for a DUI. It wasn't, but I continued to drink. And it was 1 week later from then that my dad called me up because I had called out of work on one of the days. And my dad called me and basically said, "You're done. You don't have a job anymore. And you don't have a place to live. I can't deal with this anymore. You're killing yourself. You're in turn killing me. And I can't do this." So I got a ride to my house, and my dad was there, and a friend of mine, this girl that drove me to my house, Liz, we were sitting there, and I remember my dad telling me that he had gotten in touch with a treatment facility in Florida. And I was like, okay, I have no idea why this is even needed, but sure, I'll go ahead and go. And I got on the phone with them, and within 24 hours, I was at the treatment facility. I flew into Jacksonville, Florida, to go to treatment, and that was September 15th of 2010 is whenever I flew in. September 16th of 2010 is what my sobriety date is. I was there for about 45 days. When I was there, I had met some people that really kind of impacted me in the sense of they were going through exactly what I was going through. I had known at this point that the average person doesn't drink as much as I do, but I didn't really understand the whole idea of alcoholism. When I met these people and they started sharing about their stories and their situations, I started identifying with that. And I had a primary therapist, and I started, doing the individual sessions with this primary therapist, and she helped me see, kind of the different characteristics of alcoholism. And, she helped me identify with the fact that I had a problem. But I didn't know what was in store for me. I thought I was going to do 30 days and go back to Pittsburgh, and that was going to be that. Well, her and my dad had concocted this plan to send me to South Florida, West Palm Beach. And I remember they basically, my dad was on a conference call. He was on the call, and I was sitting in my therapist's office, and they had said, you have an opportunity to go to an IOP program in West Palm Beach. And I'm like, okay, sounds good, because now at this point it's October and snow's going to be flying in Pennsylvania. I would love the opportunity to go to, South Florida and, stay there for 60 or 90 days. So I did. I got on a flight and I flew into West Palm Beach, and this guy picked me up at the airport. His name's Kevin. And that was really where things started to become really good for me. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know a soul. I knew I had an opportunity ahead of me. And from the moment that this guy picked me up, I just felt like this sense of freedom almost. And I went into a sober living house called House of Principles. It's no longer there anymore. And I remember pulling up, and it was this big apartment building, and there was like 10 or 12 apartments there, and there were like 40 guys living on this compound type thing. And they were all getting sober, whether it be from drugs or alcohol. They were all getting sober. And I built a community, and I quickly realized, okay, there's certain people within this house that want to be clean and want to be sober. There's certain people within this house that don't want to be clean and don't want to be sober. And depending on where I fall on that spectrum is going to depend on the people is going to determine the people that I hang around with. And I had started understanding, okay, alcohol, at this point, I knew what alcohol had done to me, and I didn't want to go back to it. So I started sticking with the people that were doing the deal. I finally was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. I had gone to meetings, the small group of people. They were going to church every Sunday, and I stuck with those people. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I just knew I felt good. I knew that I didn't have that anxiety anymore. I knew that things were just on the up and up. And so I did that for, well, fast forward to today, almost 13 years. I did an IOP program when I came to West Palm. IOP's intensive outpatient. I went to a place called Recovery Associates. I was introduced to a guy by the name of Jim Rapp. And Jim Rapp was a big influence on my sobriety. He was a guy that he had 26 or 27 years sober. When I met him, he was a retired New York City police officer. He had started this program called Recovery Associates, and him and I developed a strong bond. And, a lot of what I have implemented today in Rock Recovery Center and in my own sobriety is of a direct result of him. This guy, when I tell you he would do anything for anybody, that is an understatement. Any person I know that he interacted with, he would help if he could. He was just that person. He knew what sobriety was about. He knew what he had to offer people, and he knew what he got in return from helping other people. Because him helping other people obviously helped him stay clean and sober himself. And so I got really close to this guy, and him, his wife, and I think looking back on it today, I was like kind of the son he never had. He ended up taking a trip to Italy, and it was a trip that he had wanted to do for so long and was just never able to do it for financial reasons or whatever the case. But he was finally able to do it because, he started this program, Recovery Associates, and he was able to manage his money well enough and be able to take this trip. And so he went to Italy for like a month, and I had such a strong bond with him, and he trusted me that he asked me to stay at his house for a month while he was on this trip in Italy. And at this point, I had 2 or 3 years of sobriety, and I was actually working for Recovery Associates at this point. And shortly after he got back from his trip, or maybe it was before he went on his trip, this guy got diagnosed with cancer, and he ended up passing away from cancer. So I had an opportunity in 2014 to start Rock Recovery Center. At this point, I had 4 years of sobriety, and I was approached by some people about starting a small IOP program. And I said, yeah, I think so. I think it could be a good thing. I have some pretty good contacts, and, I think we could help some people. And that's what we did. All the while, we stayed true to what we believe, and this is something that Jim Rapp told me, which was, as long as you keep the client first, everything else will fall into place. And that holds true to this day. At Rock Recovery Center here, we always do what's in the best interest of the client first and foremost, and everything else will fall into place. There's people here right now that are clients of ours that are complete scholarships. We don't get paid a penny for them to be here, but we commit to them to help them. And they don't know that they're scholarships, but they are. And that was something that, honestly, Jim taught me, was as long as you keep the clients first and foremost, everything else will fall into place and be exactly the way that it's supposed to be. Shortly after I started Rock Recovery Center with a couple other people here, I ended up, I met Ben. Well, I met Ben a year after I got sober, and him and I became really good friends right off the rip. We became really good friends, and we found out we're born on the same exact day, same year, crazy in and of itself. And we met at Palm Beach State College in the addictions program there. And I remember he went off and got his first job in treatment. I went off and got my first job in treatment, which wasn't Recovery Associates. My first job in treatment at a year sober was at a place called Palm Beach Institute. And I worked there for about 6 months. And then I transitioned over to Recovery Associates, where I worked there for another couple of years. Went to Palm Beach State through their addictions program, got my certified addictions counselor certificate, and met Ben. And shortly after we had started Rock Recovery Center, Ben was working at another program that ended up, he built this program and it ended up shutting down for other reasons. And I knew that he had become available. So I called him and I said, Ben, hey, listen, we could really use you over here. At this point, we were struggling a little bit. I said, we would really be able to use you, and we'd love for you to come on board. And he said, I'm all in. And so when Ben came on, it was, and I've always said this, that was a very pivotal moment for us here at Rock Recovery Center, because Ben is somebody that, when I said before, what I learned from Jim Rapp was you put the client first, everything else will fall into place. Some people have to make a conscious effort to do that because there's money involved. And when there's money involved, it can cause people to compromise on their ethics and their morals. But Ben is the type of person that he doesn't have to make that conscious effort. Ben is the type of person that always 100% of the time puts the clients first. He's very people-oriented. He's very, he will talk to anybody for hours about sobriety and about recovery, and he will go above and beyond to try and get somebody the help that they need. Not saying I'm not that way. I am, just not as much as Ben. When Ben came on board here, he had built such a foundation of people in his life, in his sobriety, that it just naturally it improved our program. Because he was so well networked, everybody loved Ben. And if Ben was at Rock Recovery Center, then everybody knew Rock Recovery Center was a very good program because Ben was there. And that was, like I said, it was a very pivotal moment for us. And that goes back to 2015, 2016, something in there. And so all the while I say this, and that's pretty much my story. Every single step of the way has been perfectly placed. It's been a direct result of the people that I have interacted with in my sobriety. It's been a direct result of the network that I've built within my sobriety, the work that I've done on myself. I still, to this day, have a therapist. I've put in a lot of work. I've put in a lot of effort to be where I'm at today. And everything that I have done is the same exact message that I try and portray to every single person that steps foot in these doors. Ben is the same exact person. He has worked very hard. I have worked very hard. He has gone above and beyond for not only himself and his family, but for every single person that steps through these doors here at Rock. And that is why I firmly believe we're still here. We're still in business. We've been open 9 years, I think, or maybe 10, almost 10. I can't remember. But I really believe it's because we have put forth, and not only just myself and Ben, every single person that is here, every staff member that is here has directly or indirectly been affected by addiction, and we have all done work on ourselves, and we all make it our mission to help every single person that steps foot in these doors, regardless of insurance, regardless of socioeconomic status. It doesn't make a difference. We treat here 20 to 25 people at a time. That is it. We treat everybody equally. It doesn't matter to us. Some people are here for free. Some people here we get paid on. And it's just the way that it is. We've developed a program here that is something that I'm extremely proud of. I know Ben's extremely proud of, and every single person that works here is extremely proud of. And our clients, they know as soon as they walk in here that this place is something special, that they may have been to treatment 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 times before they finally make it here. But when they do make it here, they understand, okay, they do something different. And I think what separates us from most is that we actually care. I mean, that's really the bottom line to it. We care. Our therapists are the best therapists I think that any treatment center could find. We all know about each other's families. We're comfortable in sharing our hardships, things that are going good. We're all extremely transparent with one another. It's not a corporate feel or anything like that. And I think it's a direct result of because we are no better than the person that steps foot in these doors. And I tell that to clients. I tell that to parents. Listen, I'm the same exact person as you are. It just so happens that I have a little bit of sobriety time under my belt. But if you're willing to put forth the effort and you're willing to do the work and you're willing to get a little bit uncomfortable and you're willing to listen and take suggestions, you can be exactly where I'm at. And I can guarantee it. I will guarantee somebody that. But you got to put forth the effort. You got to put forth the work, and there's no other way around it. So that is my story. I hope you got something out of it. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you could reach out to me, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com. And if you want to reach out to Ben, you can reach him at ben@realrecoverytalk.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. And I hope to hear from you soon. That is it. We will see y'all later.